Hi, Kira. I'm waiting to the kids. Where's Kira? There she is. Hi. I can't go for a walk now. Later, okay? She'll have to wait. Hi. Sit down. I'm going to read Alice and the Birthday Giant by John F. Green and illustrated by Marianne Kowalski. And with permission of Scholastic. Alice and the Birthday Giant. As usual, let's see if you guys can see it. As usual, Alice had fallen asleep in front of the TV, but this time she woke up feeling especially happy. Today was her birthday and she was going to have a party. This is going to be an extraordinary day, she said. I can just feel it. Kira thinks I'm talking to her. Uh-oh. She raced upstairs, but just as she was about to open her bedroom door, she heard something. Someone was snoring like an outboard motor with hiccups. Alice had never heard anything quite like it before. As quietly as she could, she opened the door. There, sprawled across her bed, was the biggest, ugliest, messiest looking one-eyed giant imaginable. He was much too large for the bed, which groaned under his weight, and much too wide for the blankets, which would never cover his enormous belly. Every time he snored, the lamp rattled from side to side. Uh-oh. That's the cover. I am reading. Alice was sure she was dreaming. Maybe if I close the door... Are you making me a kiss? No, I'm reading to the kids right now. Gotta go sit down. Okay? No, sit down. She doesn't like that. Maybe if I close the door and open it again, she thought, he'll be gone. But as she reached for the doorknob, the giant began to stir in his sleep. His thick, hairy arms almost touched the walls, and his legs stuck out over the end of the bed like two huge tree trunks. Run! He roared. Alice jumped right out of the room and slammed the door behind her. Uh-oh, I guess they don't like my roar. That was me. Never mind. Hey! That was me. When she opened it again, the giant was sitting, scratching his belly. Who are you? He growled. Kira, quiet. My name is Alice, and this is my bedroom. Well, how did I get here if it's your bedroom? Asked the giant, rubbing his head. He fixed one big eye on Alice. Do you know anything about that? Look at him. Not really, she said carefully, except what? Have you ever wished for something so hard you just knew it was going to come true? Asked Alice. Yesterday I wished for something very special to happen today, something very big. I think you're it. The giant snorted. Well, if you wished me here, then you can just wish me back. Alice squeezed her eyes shut and wished as hard as she could, but when she opened them again, he was still sitting there looking worried. I want to go home, he said. I know you do, said Alice, because if my father catches you, he'll have you stuffed and put in a museum. The giant shivered. Don't worry, we'll think of something, promised Alice. But right now I have to get ready for my birthday party. I'll have to find someplace to put you while that's going on. The giant's eye brightened. I went to a birthday party once, he said, smacking his lips. I ate 287 hot dogs and 72 bowls of ice cream. That was all Alice needed to hear. I'll put you in the storage room, she decided. Nobody ever goes in there. She led him through the kitchen and into the basement. You'll have to keep quiet, she said. As soon as the party is over, I'll figure out what to do. Promise? Promise, said Alice, and she closed the door. Any predictions as to what she's going to do? Alice's father had decorated the kitchen with balloons and ribbons. The table was covered with paper plates, pointed hats, and horns. hot dogs, pickles, and ice cream, and lots of presents. Alice's mother was carrying in the biggest, most scrumptious-looking chocolate birthday cake any of them had ever seen when they heard of some thumping footsteps. Everybody stopped having fun to listen. Oh. Alice's father looked around the table to see if anyone was missing. "Someone is coming up the basement stairs," he said in amazement. Alice knew exactly what was happening. "Oh no," she groaned, "not now." All at once the basement door crashed open and flew off its hinges. Scrunched in the doorway, his arms dangling to his knees, his great belly hanging over his belt, and his single eye staring at everyone, stood the giant. His bulging nose sniffed the air carefully. "If it isn't too much trouble," he said politely, "could I please have a hot dog and some ice cream?" Well, at least he asked nicely, right? Trouble. At first no one moved, then everyone went wild. With a screech, Alice's mother sent the birthday cake sailing through the air. It hit the refrigerator door and slid to the floor. Children tripped over one another, trying to get out of the way. They jumped through windows and dived under tables and chairs. Pickles, hot dogs, and ice cream sailed around their room, splattering the walls and the ceiling. And Alice's father, his eyes as round as dinner plates, ran right through the screen door without opening it. Well, he's the father. He's supposed to stay and protect them. Oh boy, this is quite a picture. Alice sat at the end of the table, her chin resting in her hands, and stared at the shambles the giant had made. "You promised you wouldn't make a sound until I came to get you," she scolded. "Now look what you've done to my birthday party." The giant hung his head. "I couldn't help it. I'm hungry and I love birthday parties, especially with hot dogs." Alice shook her head. "When my father gets back, he'll have the police and the fire department with him, and probably the man from the museum." "I want to go home," groaned the giant, wailed. Suddenly, Alice was on her feet. "Ms. McCracken," she cried. "She works at the public library. She'll be able to help us." The giant was already halfway out the door. "What are we waiting for? Hop aboard and point the way." With Alice high atop his shoulders, the giant strode through the streets toward the library. People scattered in all directions as they approached. It is a funny picture. Alice introduced Ms. McCracken to the giant. "We need your help to get him home again," she said. The librarian stared, then frowned at Alice. "What have you been up to?" she asked. "All I did was make a wish, honest." "It must have been some wish." She looked closely at the giant. "Where did you come from?" He shrugged his shoulders. "Someplace with mountains, I think." "That," said Ms. McCracken, "could be anywhere." Look at the boy hiding behind the bookshelf. That's true. Okay. Looks like maybe they're getting the map out. I don't know. She moved slowly along the shelves, rummaging through books and manuscripts. "There's an old book in here somewhere that's filled with magic spells. I wonder where I put it." The giant was pacing up and down. "I can just see it now," he moaned. "People lining up at the museum doors to see the stuffed one-eyed giant." "Here it is," Miss McCracken announced, blowing a puff of dust from a very large, very old book. The giant dug into his pocket and brought out a small eyeglass, which he perched on the end of his nose. He peered at the book curiously as Alice read the title, "Magic Spells, Witches, Potions, and Horrible Oaths." "Isn't that a bit risky?" she asked. Miss McCracken was thumbing through the book page by page. "Aha," she said at last. "Just what we're looking for. A magic spell to make a giant disappear." Well, my question is, though, we don't really want him to disappear. We want to send him home, right? "Hold on." "Aha," cried the giant. I don't want to disappear. I just want to get back to... It was too late. Miss McCracken had already started the spell. Look at this picture. Are those goats? Wham, bam, oh, wham, bam, Billy Goats, Simple Simon in a boat, spin a giant's head about and make him disappear. The library was suddenly filled with 100 goats, all in rowboats and all bleating loudly. The giant was nowhere in sight, but Alice was sure that one of the goats blinked mournfully at her with a big round eye in the middle of its forehead. Oh, I think it's right there. Oh, no. Oh, dear, that didn't work out at all. No kidding. I'd better get him back and try again, muttered Miss McCracken. Purple bats, alley cats, thunder, lightning, rain, acrobats, floor mats, bring 'em back again. There was a brilliant blue flash, and the giant reappeared in the middle of the table. Tiny wisps of gray smoke trickled from his nostrils. Alice thought he looked a bit frazzled. "You're back!" she cried happily. "Take that book away from her," the giant yelled. "I can't stand any more of this." Just then the library door burst open. In came Alice's father, followed by several policemen, the fire chief, and a man carrying a very large net, as if this net's going to pick health right. Alice looked at Miss McCracken. "The next one had better work," she said. Miss McCracken took a deep breath. "Forest breeze, mighty trees, mountains made of stone. There's a one-eyed giant here, please send him home." For a few seconds, nothing happened, but when Alice turned back to look at the giant, he was gone. A soft wind brushed across her face, and with it came the scent of a mountain valley after a summer rain. It lifted papers, swept through the potted plants, and finally disappeared through an open window. Ms. McCracken slammed the book shut. "That," she said firmly, "takes care of that." Well, that was easy. Alice couldn't believe the giant had left without saying goodbye. She almost wished now the spell hadn't worked. She ran past her father, bolted down the steps, and raced for home. She flew through the kitchen without stopping to say hello, charged up the stairs, and pushed open her bedroom door. The room was empty. Alice looked under the bed and behind the drapes. She even looked in the closet. The giant was really gone. "I hope he's gone to a place with lots of birthday parties," she said forlornly. She yawned and stretched out on the bed. I wonder how this is going to end. I just don't think it's going to just stop there. Oh, here we go. She was almost asleep. When she noticed a small, round object lying on her pillow. It was the giant's eyeglass, with a note attached to it. The words were written in huge, crooked letters. See them? "For my good friend Alice, please keep this eyeglass to remember our adventure. Your friend, the giant." Alice smiled. Her eyes closed before she read the other side of the note. "P.S. Be sure to save me some hot dogs and ice cream. I'll be back next year for your birthday." Aww. I like that. Alice and the birthday giant. So be careful if you wish for something really big, because you might end up getting a giant.